Hello boys and girls, welcome to yet another episode of Little Modular. Today I present you this beautiful and extremely useful module by a Belgian company called JORANALOGUE, which is called Compare 2. Now before we start talking about basics of this module and how it works, let me tell you a little bit about what a comparator is. In essence, this is a tool that allows you to derive a gate signal out of a CV signal. So CV in, gate out, simple as that. So you can plug in LFO, envelope, any kind of CV signal into it, and it will derive a gate output depending on a threshold that is set. So whenever the CV signal that you input here crosses that threshold, it triggers a gate. One of the simplest uses of it I have shown you in the demo at the beginning of the video, where I have inputted some LFOs in both of the inputs, and then I have taken all the different gate outs which were fueling my drum module. So this could be, for example, used as a complex rhythm generator, but it has many more uses as it also takes audio signals. So this could be used to mangle your oscillators beyond recognition. So what is so special about Compare 2? Well, first of all, this comparator is using two thresholds, so it is more flexible. It's really easy to imagine if you think of those thresholds as a window. Let's say this is our CV signal. Let's say it's a portion of a sine wave. Now I have this window right here, right? So whenever this signal is within this window, the module generates a gate output. Now I can change the size of this window, so it could be smaller or wider, like so. Now if this signal goes below the window, it will not produce any gate. It will produce a gate at the not output, which I will talk about in a second. Same if the signal is above the window. It won't produce anything. It has to be within this window, okay? You can shift this window up and down, so I can process only a portion of the given signal, like this sine wave, okay? So you get the picture. Now this makes up for a really flexible module with dozens of variables, because first of all, the outcome of the gates depends on what kind of CV you input, obviously. Then it also depends on how wide the window is going to be, and then which portion of the signal it's going to process. So let's start with the interface and let me explain you step by step how it works. The shift knob is responsible for shifting the window up and down. At the noon position, it is at the 0 volts. You can shift it up to 5 volts and down to -5 volts. Below, you have the size knob, which, surprise, surprise, allows you to set the size of the window, counterclockwise being the smallest size, which is about few millivolts, and then up to the rightmost position, which is 10 volts. So really huge window. Below, you have a really useful LED corresponding to those two parameters, which shows you where the signal actually is. That's really helpful. So you have three colors. You have red, blue, and white. Whenever a signal is in the window, so it produces gate, the LED flashes white. If the signal lies below the window thresholds, it is blue. If it goes above the threshold, it is red. Now, if it's above or below, doesn't mean it doesn't produce gates. It's just not producing gates at the outputs. It is producing gates at the not output. So whenever the LED goes white, you get the gate out of the output. But if it goes above or below the threshold, you get an output at the not out. Besides that, you also have a logical section down here, which consists of basic logical operations and or XOR and flip-flop. So these are derived from signals that are coming from both of the sections. Here you have input for first section, here you have input for the second section, and here you have 4 modulation inputs that allow you to modulate each of the potentiometers right here. So you have a shift and size, both are normalized, so you can use one signal for each section to modulate the second one, which is really useful. Now I want to go slow with this one because, like with all logical modules, it could be really hard to grasp at the beginning, but it's really not. Once you understand what's the principle, it's really easy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take out of my bank oscillator, going into signal in on mix 3, also by JORANALOGUE, great module, and I'm going to open up VCA on this mixer with gate output from the first section, like so. I will take a simple sine wave. I will patch this sine wave into the first section in. Now you can see as I plugged it in that the LED started to work, and we're getting all sorts of different indications. So now we have the first section, which has a shift at the 0, it's not shifted anyway, and size in the middle. So now you can see that when it goes white, this is sending a gate out to mixer, which triggers VCA. Now if we decrease the size, you can hear that the gate is getting shorter and shorter. That is because the window is really narrow right now, so the signal stays within the window for a short period of time. Now we can move it up or down like so, but in this particular case of a sine wave, it won't give us any spectacular results. Now if we increase it, it's going to be mostly on because the window is really wide, so the signal has a lot of margin to work with. Okay, like so. When it's in the noon and at the full size, it just stays on for the whole time. Now the real fun begins when you start modulating shift and size on this module. Okay, we are modulating those knobs. By the way, if you add a CV here, it's getting added to the position of the knobs. I can also take out any of the gates from the logical outputs, which are located right here. And that's the basic operation on compare to. But that's just a start, because this module not only takes CVs, but it also takes audio signals, and you can modulate those audio signals at the audio rate and at the LFO rate. Anything in between, you can mold it, add the logical outputs, combine those two sections, and do lots and lots of stuff, which I'll show you in a second. What I have done here, I have connected both of the outputs of both of the sections to a mixer out and pan them hard left and right. Remember that the inputs as well as the CV-ins are all normalized. So if I patch anything into the first section in, it's automatically passed to the second section. What I have here is a simple triangle wave out of my Rubicon, which I connect to the first output. Now see what is going to happen when I twist all the knobs. We get this really nice, fat, pulse width modulation effects with dozens of different timbres. Of course, all depending on the pitch of the oscillator and the size and shift parameters. Now what we can do, we can modulate those knobs. Let's say I'm using a Batumi LFO. Okay. Just different outs of the same LFO. And I can do it at the normal LFO speeds or at some crazy audio rate speeds, turning this simple triangle wave into some hellish stereo drone. Now let's slow it down. Now on top of that, I can of course use different outputs, and they will all sound different, like flip-flop for example. They will give you some octave switching. You can hear it. Okay, we can speed it up again. And of course, on top of that, like it's not enough, you could plug in a different oscillator in here. In my case, I'm just going to plug it in randomly, my bank oscillator. Okay, so different signal, different modulation, and hundreds of sounds. Let's take it out of XOR. Okay. This is an example of digital ring modulator. What I have done here, I have connected two different oscillators. One is a Rubicon, second one is AFG. Different frequencies, different oscillators, and I have taken the XOR output into my mixer and digital ring modulation. Voila! You can achieve all kinds of different beating, whole palette of sounds, all changing with each twist of a knob. And of course, frequencies on the oscillators play a pretty big role here also. Phasey, tubey, squarey sounds. Okay, sounds really nice. And of course, please do use those CV-ins for different effects. I can just play whole day with it. So cool. Now the last patch is a little bit more complicated. Compare 2 is used here to synchronize two oscillators, soft synchronize them. So what you do is you plug in the oscillator to be synced to the first input, master so-called oscillator to the second input. Then you take the XOR output and patch it into the FM in on the slave oscillator. In my case, I have slaved the Rubicon to AFG, and that's how it sounds like. And of course, nothing stands in the way of experimenting with different outputs, getting some crazy different responses. So as you can see, this module is hell of a utility. You can animate any kind of patch with it and come up with some crazy arrangements beyond anything that I have showed you here, which were basics. It doesn't seem like much at the beginning, but if you take a closer look, it's incredible module. Not to mention the great build quality and the beautiful LEDs, which remind me of my first modular system, which was a great Serge synthesizer, and they really glow nicely in the dark. So I love this module. I can't recommend it enough. If you have some modulation sources or some sound sources and you have run out of inspiration, this can inject it back into your studio life. So give it a spin, give it a ride. Thank you very much, take care, and I'll see you next time. And as usual, if you liked that video and if you found it useful, please subscribe and pass on the good word. Ciao.